Hi, hello everyone. Welcome back to my channel. Today let's talk about a William Shakespeare's play, Measure for Measure. Measure for Measure, written in 1603 or 1604, published in 1623 in the first volume. William Shakespeare, 1564-1616. Measure for Measure is classified as one of Shakespeare's problem plays or dark comedies, blending elements of a tragedy and a comedy with moral and political questions. The play explores justice, morality, mercy, and hypocrisy, questioning the application of law and the nature of virtue. Written around 1603 or 1604, during the Jacobean era, it reflects a contemporary concerns about authority, sexual morality, and governance. The play is set in Vietnam, a city known for its strict laws but its tax enforcement, providing a backdrop for exploring corruption and moral dilemmas. Explanation of the title. The phrase Measure for Measure originates from the Bible, specifically Matthew 7:2. The line is, "For with what judgment ye judge, ye shall be judged." It implies justice or retribution. That is the idea that the severity or leniency one shows will be reciprocated. The title sets the tone for the play's central question, that is, how should justice be measured? With a strictness or mercy? How do personal biases affect a judgment? Now let's discuss about the main characters. First of all, we have the Duke Vincenzo, the Duke of Vietnam, who temporarily relinquishes power to test his deputy's governance and to observe his city's morality firsthand, disguised as a friar. Then we have Angelo, the strict deputy left in charge by the Duke, who enforces Vietnam's harsh moral laws with his severity, but he secretly acts hypocritically. Then we have Isabella, a novice nun, and the virtuous sister of Claudio, who pleads for her brother's life, embodying purity and moral integrity. Then we have the character Claudio. Claudio is a young nobleman sentenced to death for impregnating a girl before marriage, representing the common man caught by harsh laws. Then we have the character Mariana, Angelo's former betrothed, abandoned when her dowry was lost, who plays a key role in Angelo's downfall. Then we have Lucio, a bawdy comic nobleman who provides comic relief and a social commentary through his wit and gossip. Then we have Aeschylus, a wise lord who advises Angelo and the Duke, advocating for justice tempered with mercy. Then we have the character Pompey, who is a bawdy pimp who runs a brothel, representing the seedy underbelly of Vietnam society. Now let's talk about the main themes. Justice versus mercy. Central to the play is the tension between strict law enforcement and a compassionate mercy. Then we have the theme of hypocrisy and corruption. Angelo's public righteousness hides his moral feelings, exposing the dangers of hypocrisy. The next theme, sexual morality and power. The play probes the abuse of sexual authority and the societal control over women's bodies. The next theme, law and governance. The play critiques political authority and questions who should wield their power and how. The next theme, virtue and temptation. Isabella's struggle highlights conflicts between personal virtue and societal demands. The next theme, appearance versus reality. The Duke's disguise and Angelo's double life explore deception and truth. The next theme, redemption and forgiveness. The conclusion raises questions about repentance and the limits of forgiveness. Now let's go to the structure and the division, an act-wise summary. Act first, establishing conflict. The Duke announces he is leaving Vietnam and appoints Angelo as his deputy, tasked with enforcing Vietnam's strict moral laws. Angelo immediately arrests Claudio for impregnating Juliet out of wedlock, sentencing him to death. Claudio's sister, Isabella, a novice nun, pleads for his life. Angelo propositions Isabella, that is, her virginity for Claudio's freedom. Isabella refuses and is horrified by Angelo's hypocrisy. Meanwhile, the Duke disguises himself as a friar and stays in Vietnam to observe events secretly. Comic relief through Lucio's bawdy remarks and conversations. Now Act second, intensifying the moral dilemma. Isabella confronts Angelo about his proposition. He insists on his terms. Mariana, Angelo's former fiancée, whom he abandoned, still loves him. The Duke of Ria advises Isabella and begins planning to expose Angelo. Claudio faces his impending execution, but is consoled by the Duke. Lucio's brash behavior and attempts to spread a scandal add a social commentary. Now Act 3, the bed trick and a plot thickens. The Duke of Ria orchestrates the bed trick, that is, Mariana takes Isabella's place and sleeps with Angelo, thus tricking him. Claudio is imprisoned and awaits execution. Isabella is distraught but resolute. Angelo remains unaware of the substitution. Lucio continues his bawdy gossips and encounters the disguised Duke. The theme of appearances versus reality is emphasized. Now Act 4, justice and deception. Claudio is sentenced to death and executed, though the audience suspects otherwise. The Duke of Ria reveals he secretly saved Claudio and replaced him with another person. Mariana seeks justice for Angelo's betrayal. Angelo begins to feel guilty, but continues to maintain his stern public image. Isabella plans to appeal directly to the Duke. Lucio attempts to expose Angelo, but ends up in trouble. Now Act 5, resolution and revelations. The Duke returns to public life and reveals Angelo's corruption. Mariana confronts Angelo, demanding justice. Angelo is arrested and faces punishment, but the Duke offers him a chance for mercy. Claudio is revealed alive, and justice is restored. The Duke proposes to Isabella, raising complex questions about power, authority, and forgiveness. The play ends ambiguously, blunting restoration with lingering ethical uncertainties. Now let's talk about the inspiration behind the play. Shakespeare's source was George Wheatstone's Promos and Cassandra, published in 1578, which itself was based on a classic tale involving a corrupt magistrate. The play reflects early 17th century concerns about law, morality, and the abuse of power in England under James I. It examines social issues such as sexual morality, justice, and political authority. resonating with the contemporary debates about governance and individual rights. The Duke's disguise and the better trick are common Renaissance dramatic devices used to explore themes of deception and revelation. Now let's have a look at the critical interpretation of the work. Some critics see it as a serious morality play about a justice tempered with mercy. Others view it as a dark comedy exposing human hypocrisy and the failures of law. The play's ambiguous ending and complex characters challenge simple moral readings, reflecting the problem play runs in. It raises important questions about the power dynamics between men and women, especially in the context of sexual coercion. The play is often analyzed for its exploration of authority and the limits of political power. Overall, Measure for Measure challenges audience to reflect on justice, mercy, and moral hypocrisy. It is a complex exploration of authority, sexuality, and a human fallibility. The play's blend of dark themes with the comedic elements and its unresolved ethical questions make it enduringly relevant. Shakespeare presents a world where strict laws collide with human weaknesses, asking how society should balance justice with compassion. Now let's understand the main chords and other explanations. First one. Some rise by sin, and some by virtue fall. Spoken by Aeschylus in Act 2nd, Scene 1st. This chord reflects the ironic and complex moral landscape of the play, where virtue does not always lead to success, and a sin can sometimes bring power. It highlights the unpredictability of justice and human fortune. Aeschylus suggests that life's outcomes are not always fair or straightforward. Now the next chord. The tempter or the tempted, who sins most? Spoken by Isabella in Act 2nd, Scene 2nd. Isabella questions the morality of Angelo's proposition, challenging whether the corrupter or the corrupted bears greater guilt. It raises issues of power, consent, and victimization. This moral dilemma is central to the play's exploration of justice and sexual morality. Now the next chord. Lord Angelo is precise, stands at a guard with envy, scarce confesses that his blood flows, or that his appetite is more to bread than stone. Spoken by Lucio in Act 1st, Scene 2nd. Lucio criticizes Angelo's hypocritical severity, suggesting Angelo suppresses his natural desires under the guise of strict morality. The court exposes Angelo's rigid exterior, masking human weaknesses. It also foreshadows Angelo's later moral failings. The next chord. What is mine is yours, and what is yours is mine. Spoken by Duke Vincenzo in Act 5, Scene 1st. The Duke utters this line during his proposal to Isabella, reflecting themes of generosity and a shared power. It underscores the complex relationship between authority, love, and possession. However, it also raises questions about consent and the nature of their union. Now the next chord. Condemn the fault and not the actor of it. Spoken by Duke Vincenzo in Act 5, Scene 1st. Here the Duke advocates separating the sin from the sinner, emphasizing mercy over harsh punishment. It reflects the play's large debate on justice tempered with compassion. The line promotes forgiveness rather than rigid retribution. Now the next chord. We must not make a scarecrow of the law, setting it up to fear the birds of prey. spoken by Angelo and Act second scene first. Angelo argues for strict law enforcement, warning against leniency that undermines authority. The metaphor criticizes weakening law to avoid offending those who break them. This highlights the conflict between justice and mercy. The next quote. Death is a fearful thing, spoken by Claudio in Act First Scene 2. Claudio's simple statement captures his terror at the prospect of execution. It humanizes him as an ordinary man caught in harsh moral laws. The line evokes sympathy and highlights the play's tragic stakes. The next quote. I speak to him, and to that power I speak, that I do think I have no brother sin. Spoken by Isabella, Act second scene second. Isabella appeals to divine justice and her own innocence in confronting Angelo. The court emphasizes her moral certainty and purity. It contrasts sharply with Angelo's duplicity and foreshadows the battle of virtue versus corruption. The next quote. Our doubts are traitors and make us lose the good we often might win by fearing to attempt. Spoken by Lucio in Act second scene second. Lucio's advice highlights the paralyzing effect of fear and hesitation. It encourages taking bold action rather than succumbing to doubt. This theme resonates with Isabella's struggle to save Claudio. Now the next quote. The spirit of justice is not wherein most law copiously exerts itself, but where it is less restrained. Spoken by Duke Vincenzo in Act 5 Scene First. The Duke suggests that true justice involves balance and restraint, not excessive severity. This reflects the play's main moral argument about the limits of legal power. It calls for compassion alongside law enforcement. Now the next quote. I crave death more willingly than mercy. Spoken by Claudio in Act 3 Scene First. Claudio here expresses despair and prefers death to dishonor or loss of dignity. His statement underscores the harsh consequences of strict moral codes. It also highlights the tragic human cost of Angelo's loss. Now the next quote. Liberty plucks justice by the nose. The body beats the nurse. It is spoken by Aeschylus in Act 2 Scene First. Aeschylus laments how freedom can undermine justice and authority. The metaphor shows how those who meant to be protected by law can become its oppressors. It reflects the chaotic state of Vietnam under Angelo's harsh rule. Now the next quote. This outward-sainted deputy, whom I trust and live to honor, keeps his word. Spoken by Duke Vincenzo in Act 5 Scene First. The Duke Vincenzo, ironic praise of Angelo as outwardly sainted, acknowledges his hypocrisy. It reflects the tension between appearance and reality. The Duke's trust is ultimately shown to be misplaced. Now the next quote. Some rise by sin, and some by virtue fall. Spoken by Aeschylus in Act 2 Scene First. This quote points to the play's exploration of the irony in human fortunes. It suggests that moral behavior does not always lead to success, and vice versa. The line underlines the complexity of justice. Now the next quote. I had rather give my body than my soul. spoken by Isabella in Act second, scene second. Isabella refuses Angelo's sexual proposition, valuing her spiritual purity over physical survival. It demonstrates a steadfastness and a moral integrity. This card captures the central conflict of virtue versus coercion. The next card. What you will do or think or say or undo is wrought on every joint and in every limb. Spoken by Duke Vincentio in Act 5, Scene 1st. The Duke reminds us that all human actions are interconnected and have consequences. It emphasizes responsibility and the holistic nature of justice. The court reinforces the play's concern with the moral cause and effect. Now the next quote. There is a kind of character in thy life that to the observer doth thy history fully unfold. Duke Vincentio speaks this line in Act 5, Scene 1st. And this highlights how actions reveal a person's true nature over time. It speaks to the theme of reputation, identity, and accountability. The Duke suggests that Angelo's hypocrisy has been transparent all along. Now the next quote. The law hath not been dead, though it hath slept. Spoken by Duke Vincentio in Act 5, Scene 1st. The Duke here implies that justice still exists, despite periods of neglect or corruption. It suggests a restoration of order by the play's end. This card offers hope for moral renewal. Now the next card. I love the people, but do not like to stage me to their eyes. Spoken by Duke Vincentio in Act 1, Scene 1st. The Duke expresses his reluctance to govern openly, preferring to observe in disguise. This foreshadows his role as the disguised Freya and highlights themes of appearance versus reality. It reveals his interest in justice beyond power. Now the next quote. Oh, it is excellent to have a giant strength, but it is tyrannous to use it like a giant. Spoken by Isabella in Act 2, Scene 2. Isabella here critiques Angelo's abuse of his authority, warning against a tyrannical power. The metaphor emphasizes the ethical use of strength and authority. It underscores the play's critique of corruption and a misuse of power.